zoning board meeting for the city of New Brunswick for September 25th, 2017. We're all ready to go, Madam Chair.
Okay, roll call.
John Bogart.
Here.
Evelyn Ascona.
Here.
Charlotte McNair.
Here.
Doug Sheehan. Peg Chester.
Here.
John Zimmerman. Ivan Adorno.
Here.
Tracy Caparo.
Here.
Sue McElligott.
Here.
John Cox.
Here.
Nancy Cole.
Here. Public announcement, Open Public Meetings Act.
Please be advised that the notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act comply with and satisfy the annual notice of which gives sufficient notice of the time, place, and conduct of all public meetings of the Board of Adjustment of the City of New Brunswick has been filed with the City Clerk and placed on an appropriate bulletin board at the lobby of City Hall, 780 Byron Street, New Brunswick, New Jersey, and has been transmitted to the official newspapers of the City of New Brunswick, namely the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger.
Salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Minutes of the board's August 28, 2017 meeting.
Madam Chair, members of the board received copies of the minutes in their packets. Unless you have any changes or additions, a motion to approve would be in order.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed.
Communications and reports, resolutions of memorialization of approval. T-Mobile Northeast LLC Z-2017-09. Site plan variance application for the installation of telecommunications equipment on the roof of the existing building located at 77 Troost Avenue, Block 171, Lot 1, Zoning District R-5A.
Madam Chair, members have copies of the resolutions in front of them. Unless you see any changes or additions, a motion to approve would be in order.
And the members eligible to vote are Adorno, Caparo, McElligott, Cox, and Capola.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Ivan Adorno.
Yes.
Tracy Caparo.
Yes.
Sue McElligott.
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Nancy Capola.
Yes. Barrington Heights Phase 2 LLC Z-2017-07 amended site plan and sign variance application for the property located at 21 US Highway 1, Block 703, Lot 7.02, Zoning District C5.
Given Madam Chair, members have copies of the resolutions there. Unless you have any changes or additions, a motion to approve is in order.
Same members are eligible to vote on this one as well.
Motion to approve. Second.
Ivan Adorno.
Yes.
Tracy Caparo.
Yes.
Sue McElligott. John Cox.
Yes.
Nancy Capola.
Yes. James Pagano, Z-0217-05 variance application for the construction of a two-family dwelling located at 50 Bartlett Street. Block 74, Lot 29.01, Zoning District R-5A.
Again, Madam Chair, you have copies there in front of you. Unless you have any changes or additions, a motion to approve is in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Ivan Adorno.
Yes.
Tracy Caparo.
Yes.
Sue McElligott.
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Nancy Capola.
Yes. Okay, new business. Is there anyone on the board that hasn't in conflict with any of the applications we're going to hear tonight? Okay, seeing none.
Just Madam Chair, before we get started, maybe we ought to announce about the Sherwood application.
Oh, sorry, yes.
If anyone's here regarding the Sherwood development application for 25 Richardson Street, that is not going to be heard tonight. The applicant has asked to postpone that hearing, and the applicant will be doing new personal notice, so you'll get a notice in the mail if you are within 200 feet, and there'll also be public notice in the newspaper about that application. So if you hear about that application tonight, that is not going to be heard tonight.
Thank you for reminding me. Okay, our first application is Buyer Group LLC Z-2017-13 site plan and variance application for the construction of a mixed-use building located at 90 Buyer Street, Block 20, lots 12, 13, 14.01, 16 through 19, and 20.01, zoning district C-4.
Members of the board, Thomas F. Kelso on behalf of the applicant Bayer Group LLC. Very pleased to be before you this evening for this very exciting project right within our downtown area, of course right across from the courthouse and Civic Square. The application is for a preliminary and final site plan with variance approval for the construction of what is a mixed-use building which will contain ground floor retail space, 3 levels of parking, 1 level of office space of about 26,000 square feet, and 262 residential apartment units, which are comprised of 60 studios, 130 one-bedroom, and 72 two-bedroom units. As Madam Chair indicated, the property is located in the C4 downtown commercial office district, where the use is actually a permitted use. We're here before you for preliminary and final site plan, but also for 4 separate variances. The first variance is a D variance, which is what brings us here this evening, for building height. We are seeking a building height of 244 feet, whereas for this identifiable size lot, a building height of only 150 feet is permitted. However, as an overview, I would point out that the 244-foot height is permitted in the zone if you have a 40,000 square foot or greater lot. We actually have a 50,000 square foot lot, but there's one dimension that we don't meet, which is the lot width, of which we have 109 feet, whereas 150 feet is permitted. It drops us down into the height limit of 150, but we believe that we can support what's otherwise would be a permitted height of 244 feet based upon the overall size of the lot and the nature of the project. We have 3 additional variances, which are C variances. The first is what I've just indicated, which is the lot width of 109.9 feet, whereas 150 is required. We have a sky plane setback variance, which I know the board has probably seen those on a number of applications in the past, whereas there was a step back requirement at a particular height and in one location of the building close to close to Bayard Street. We don't quite meet that dimension, so there is a C variance associated with that, and the architect will be able to show you that in more detail. And finally, we have a parking variance, which we feel very comfortable with asking the board because of the nature of shared parking and the public parking that surrounds the facility. We are requesting a parking of 273 spaces, whereas a minimum of 348 are required, which we feel comfortable in presenting to you. That's an overview of the application. It's my intent to call 5 separate witnesses for you. No secret as to the order of these. I think we've seen them many times. First, I will have Mr. Bob Paulus, who is the representative of the applicant, to give you an overview. We will have our architect for testimony. We will then provide our engineer for testimony, provide civil engineering components of the project. We will then present to you our traffic expert who did a traffic analysis, and finally our planning consultant in order to provide hopefully justification for the variances we're asking of you this evening. That is the overview of the application. I think that we put together what really is a really magnificent building. We have some extra props for you this evening too, which is causing me some consternation. I can't stand over there for a while. And with that as an overview, then I'd be prepared to call first witness.
Yes, thank you.
At this time, I will call Mr. Robert Paulus for testimony.
Can you raise your right hand and state your name, spell your last name, please?
Robert G. Paulus, P-A-U-L-U-S.
And you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
Yes, I do.
Please proceed.
Mr. Paulus, obviously you are a representative of the Bayer Group LLC, and I'm sure you're as familiar as anyone with the project. Is that correct?
Yes, mostly.
I'd like you, if you could, I think it's always helpful to have the applicant give the board an overview of the project and your vision and expectations of the project, which has brought you here over many months of development.
Okay, sure. Thank you. The site contains 8 lots, approximately one.
Yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, or one.
Yeah, so mark that A1. I'll mark it white.
You mark it. Yes, so the present site contains 8 separate lots, totals 1.3 acres. We've assembled those lots over the past 10 years. As most of you will know, contains very low residential office buildings, which will be demolished in order to make room for the footprint of the building. There will not be any structures left. Presently, the occupants have no leases, and they're aware that there's a 30-day to 90-day notice for their vacation once we get everything lined up with our approvals. We have good relationships with all those tenants. We don't envision any issues along those lines. The new mixed-use building, the main entrance will be situated on the corner of Bayard and Kirkpatrick, with the rest of the building running down along Kirkpatrick with access vehicles will enter into the project from Kirkpatrick and New Street. The mixed-use project will have a streetscape of retail with parking and service entrance along Bayard, most of the retail, and along Kirkpatrick, some retail, and the entrances into the loading area in this area right here in the middle of the building, and then the more utilities in the back, and then the primary entrance onto Kirkpatrick and also onto New Street. The ground floor will consist of 7,200 square feet of retail tenants. The retail mix is envisioned to consist of a bank branch, a business shipping center, and other low-impact uses for the retail. The ground floor will also provide a lobby entrance for the office and residential units. It will also contain management office, trash and maintenance areas, bike storage for 66 bikes, and also there will be 12 parking spaces on the ground floor. The second and third and fourth floors will contain a controlled access parking deck with 273 spaces for parking of the residents and the office only. There will be no public parking in these levels. There will be controlled access from the ground floor up to the second and third levels. The fifth floor will contain 26,000 square feet of office space that can be divided into separate office suites, which will have dramatic views on the downtown and also beyond in the direction of Bayard, Kirkpatrick, and New Street primarily. The floors 6 through 20 will contain apartments consisting of 60 studios, 131 bedrooms, and 72 bedrooms ranging in size from 625 square feet to 1,325 square feet. There will be an outdoor pool and a 10,820 square foot rooftop terrace on the 6th floor, and on the 20th floor there will be a skytop lounge areas. And in the residential floor, there will be such amenities as meeting area, fitness center, movie room. The building actually will have amenities including in excess of 19,500 square feet of amenity furnished and finished areas for shared use in the building. It's our goal to develop a 20-story mixed-use building with small amount of retail and higher-end office suites and luxury residential dwellings, appealing to occupants that want to maintain a long-term business presence and also long-term residencies in downtown New Brunswick. We will seek tenants and companies that want to be in a mixed-use building and shared parking and shared amenities, and whose employees and residents will depend heavily on mass transportation that is readily available in walking distance from the complex. On the design end, we instructed our architect to incorporate higher-end construction materials, amenities, and a parking structure meeting the present and future market conditions. The architect was also directed to include striking design features, which I believe through their testimony and the graphics that they will show you, he's truly achieved that level, which we think is important to the project and the longevity of the project in the marketplace. The complex will be constructed, owned, and managed by our company, with companies. As with all of our properties, we are developing this complex for a long-term family ownership. We have many properties in New Brunswick, and that is in keeping with our overall company profile and our family profile. The residential rental rates for this project will range from $1,900 for studios, $2,700 for one-bedrooms, and approximately $3,000 to $3,400 for the various size two-bedrooms. Office suites will be at a rental area of approximately $40 per square foot. We intend to try to attract those tenants and residents that really can appreciate the quality of the building that we're going to construct on this site. This project's been something that we've been working on a long time. The assemblage has taken a long time, just because we wanted to get all of the properties that we could possibly get over the period of time. We anticipate to begin construction in early 2018, and once completed with the construction plans and the financing and all those arrangements, we should get right into the project. And that will then ensue with the demolition that will occur quickly and in an orderly fashion.
I have no further questions from Mr. Paulus.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah.
How will this impact Kirkpatrick Street in terms of people parking below the police station?
It
When
should
you're
have,
doing the demolition?
during demolition? Yeah, you should, we're going to mitigate all of that. One of the things that we have been in contact with New York Blood Center is they have a large parking lot over in the back of the building, back of our building, back of their building. We're making arrangements so that we can place our construction crane there, which will have less impact upon Kirkpatrick, the police station. But we don't envision any impact as far as Civic Square and across on the police station and any of their operations. We will, once we get approvals and get everything in line, we will be in contact with all the city officials and agencies in order to make sure that the development plans and the construction plans don't interfere with anybody's operations.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Deal.
Thank you. At this time, I would call Mr. Stephen Schock for testimony.
Raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last name for me, please.
My name is Stephen Schock, S-C-H-O-C-H.
And do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
I do.
Mr. Schock, you are a licensed architect of the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
I am.
And in that capacity, you are familiar with the design.
Mr. Hilton, I know that Mr. Shock has been before this board. Have your credentials changed since the last time you came here?
Just a few more states, but all good.
We'll accept you as an expert witness.
Thank you.
If you could, Steve, if you can, I'll just allow you to proceed. I know you have a presentation that
And
includes.
I know you're uncomfortable standing up.
I know, since I'm left-handed. So if you will just go through, give us highlights of
Sure.
the building itself.
I'll be taking you through the design components, both internal and external to the building. Most of the exhibits that I'll be using are the same ones. They're simply mounted versions of what you've already gotten. Those we typically don't mark. There will be a couple of new ones that will come out. We'll mark them as they come. And just so that you don't have to hear me talk for too long, in the middle of this, we have a little video presentation so you can really get a sense of things. So the overall program, again, the site is 8 assembled parcels. It has approximately 109 feet of frontage along Bayard Street, and then 356 feet of frontage along Kirkpatrick. And then there is approximately 32 feet of frontage here on New Street when you assemble all the parcels. And that New Street aspect really comes through for the vehicular circulation. Cars come and go off of Kirkpatrick and off of New Street, so that makes for some nice flow-through traffic there. The building itself, again, as Mr. Paulus had indicated, it's a mixed use. It's a Class A residential office building with some retail at grade and parks itself. So the base podium is at parking base, and we'll go through the exterior design in a minute, but I do want to give you some of the basic stats. 20 stories, 244 feet high. There's over half a million gross square feet, 521,970 gross square feet in the overall project. There are 60 studio apartments. They do range from 535 square feet to 600 square feet. So that's comparable to some other projects. It's a little on the larger side for studios. The 131 bedroom apartments, they range from about 700 to 740 net square feet. Again, compared to some other buildings that I know you've seen, that's a little bit on the larger size, again, with the intent being more of a Class A type of property. And the 72 two-bedroom units range from 1,055 to 1,325 square feet. The garage carries 273 cars. There's 26,260 square feet of leasable office space, and that will be on the fifth floor. So what you have is really the base, and then there's one strong floor of office, and then the residential tower above. Amenities in here. There's been a great deal of thought and consideration of attracting tenants. There are many apartments coming online, and either currently or planned. So one of the ideas that has been very strong is to make sure that this is a building that can attract and sustain a full occupancy. So there's a well-appointed lobby, there's a virtual doorman and concierge type of thing. A lot of attention to some of the things like storage for packages and deliveries that tend to bog down some of the more outdated apartment buildings. There's secure indoor bike storage. There's a 10,000 plus square foot amenity terrace that sits on top of the office level. We'll show you that specifically. But that has seating areas. It has a dog park run. It has outdoor dining ability. It's got some screening. It's got a pool. So these are all very, very strong amenities that bring and cater to this type of residential client. There's indoor fitness and yoga centers. There are common lounges, and the whole building is Wi-Fi and all of those kinds of things that people really need to attract the tenants. There is a 700 square foot indoor screening theater. It's not huge, but it's a really great place to watch a football game or a movie for the residents. And then one of the things that I'll certainly be showing you, you can see it slightly on the top here. You'll get a much better view of it in a minute. On the 20th floor, we've elected to take away two very premier apartment units and replace them with common amenities. So no matter where you live in the building, you have the opportunity to participate and partake in truly penthouse experience. There's an indoor and an outdoor area on that penthouse level, in addition to that 10,000 square foot amenity terrace level. So hopefully you get the picture that this is not just another apartment building. This has been very well thought out. In the exterior design, it's a contemporary aesthetic. What we're using down at the base of the building is the garage itself is built out of like a precast concrete, and the exterior finish is like a stone finish on that. So it's a very strong base. One of the things that you then see for the office level is basically a glass curtain wall, trying to make a very clean transition from that base to the shaft above. One of the things that you'll notice is that while much of the residential tower has large windows and large openings, the corner specifically of Bayard and Kirkpatrick, we've taken very, very great care to slightly elevate the top element and bring a very strong glass element all the way down to the base. What that does, it makes for a very, very strong experience from a signature for where the entrance is, whether it be at the civic level as a building in your skyline, or right down at the grade level. So that makes a very, very strong statement. I want to bring up one of the new markets, A2? That's in their set, so that does.
Is that the colorized version?
Yeah, the colorized versions are in the set, so this should be A2. So this is A2.
A2, sorry.
And I do have 11 by 17s of the new ones, so I don't know if you want to pass those around. So A2 it's a more refined view of the entry plaza. What we've done is we've set the building back further than the setback along Bayard Street. And what that does, it creates a very nice landscape entrance plaza. You see in the middle of this rendering, these are three of your retail bays. And then right on the corner is is the entrance to the lobby that leads to both the residential and the commercial areas. You can see how, yes, there's a garage there, but in the composition, what it does is it anchors the overall building, but it doesn't dominate the building the way sometimes garages are apt to. Part of that is because they bring the glass all the way down. Part of that is all the setbacks and activity that's going on. There is some signage at the entrance plaza for each of the tenants. There's some address signage. There were some comments about signage in the report from your professionals, and we'll certainly comply with that, and so that the signage is all within the ordinance standards. One of the things that we will be talking specifically about the sky plane towards the end, but one of the aspects to take note of is how many times the building actually does step back from the street. That's the intent of sky plane ordinances, in order to let buildings step away from the public rights of way, allow for better light, air views, and things of that nature. So there are multiple step backs. Certainly it steps back when you get above the garage, because we have competition. Garages tend to be boxy. This much we know. That's driven primarily by the geometry of how vehicles navigate. When we transition from the garage to the office, there are certain setbacks that are happening at that level. And then when we transition from the office level to the residential tower, there are even greater setbacks, all of which are intended to fulfill the intent of sky plane and the light. So what I'm going to do at this point, Keith, we have set up over here, because I've talked about still pictures. A building of this magnitude, I believe, really needs something a little bit more for you to get a sense of. Now, the rendering in the computer animation is not quite as refined, and the context around it, we don't have the entire city of New Brunswick in here, but what this video will do is it will take you on a bird's eye view around this building, and then come down to the street, and then take you through a couple of the images. So the overall video takes approximately 2.5 minutes. And this has been submitted and digitally and is marked as an exhibit.
Just so we know, we'll mark this as A3 then. Is there an electronic copy that we can
Yes,
retain?
Mark already has the electronic copy. If you can't see the screen, you're going to miss out. So it would be a good idea to get where you can. What's that? Lights. You could hit the lights. At least some of the lights.
I don't want to turn that off.
Okay, so that's the corner of Byard and Kirkpatrick, and now we're kind of going down Byard. This is effectively the back side of the building as it rises up and looks back towards the train tracks. See, from this point will be the Raritan River in the future, in the distance. What you're seeing here is the Amenity Terrace, and you take note of how many times the building steps back from the garage to the offices to the terrace. Now at grade level, you see the post office on the left side. And I mentioned before how we intentionally set the entrance of the building back, the building's position on the site back. That's in order to respect the setback of the existing historic post office. So we're not crowding Bayard Street, but what we're doing is we're setting back and trying to create something at this corner that is a very dynamic and vibrant urban corner. Have a pizza being delivered. Again, the entrance to the lobbies, and then you have your retail entrances. The area that you're seeing up above in the garage, those are not windows, those are clear openings so that the garage can naturally ventilate, but there's going to be a stainless steel grid that's in there, so it's going to have kind of a contemporary aesthetic. but that lets the air naturally go through. And you can see there's a small terrace there off the one corner of the office area even, as the building steps back in order to take advantage of those flat surfaces. Now we're at the Amenity Terrace, and hopefully we're not jumping off the Amenity Terrace, but there are multiple seating areas. You can see the pool all the way in the corner where it'll get the best light. This is the Sky Terrace, and the indoor area next to that is the Sky Lounge. So those are the spaces that every resident of the building can take advantage of some penthouse experience. So hopefully that gives you a better, more dynamic understanding of how the mass of the building sits on the site and how it's been manipulated on what's a large for downtown site, but it also has some constrained geometries with the small lot depth. I think we've been able to take great advantage of the land area that we have. So that's the description of the outside. And we can certainly come back and talk any more about exterior stuff. I do want to take you up through the building and show you what's on each floor, quite briefly. Again, for this primarily I'll be using exhibits that you already have. But at street level, there is the main entrance, and that creates storefront at the corner that's set back and extending down Kirkpatrick Street. There's over 5,000 square feet of retail faces Bayard Street, and there's another 1,870 square feet of retail about mid-block here on Kirkpatrick. Other things that are happening along Kirkpatrick Street, there is a loading bay, so literally trucks don't have to park in the street and stay in the street. There's a door, and that can all happen inside for loading and trash and things like that, so that can happen off street. Then you have the entrances and exits to the parking garage on Kirkpatrick. And then the rest of the building here, there are a couple of electrical vaults. There are some necessary things that we need to do. We've worked that out with PSE&G for the appropriateness and the size of those. And then this is the area that is enclosed. It's a secure bike storage. So there can be an awful lot of bikes coming and going, and that will happen down this area. Then if you go around to New Street, you have a secondary entrance exit into the garage. So there's a little bit of through traffic that can come and go, and there's about a dozen spaces on this floor. Then at this point in the garage, there's a ramp that takes you up to the next floor. This is your control point. So in order to drive up that ramp and park on any of the upper floors, you have to have one of those monitors, a fob of sorts, that will recognize your vehicle as belonging there. And then it'll open, and that's really where the control is. So there are no controls in stacking, and that's the key thing for zoning boards to know. There's not going to be any lines of cars out on the street trying to come in. The traffic engineer will be talking more about those things, but that's where the control is. There is back of house. There's the trash compaction. There's an elevator core with 5 elevators, one of which is a freight elevator. There is, in the back of the site plan, back here, that's where the emergency generator is going to be. So it's going to be somewhat out of sight. So that's what's happening on the ground floor. The typical parking level is not incredibly exciting, but you come up and you circle around through. And one of the things to know about this parking layout is it's what we call a flat deck parking layout. This is not where everybody's parking on an angle and driving. You go up a ramp to a flat plate, and you circle around that flat plate, and that's how the cars are. And there's an elevator lobby on each floor. So this becomes multiple levels of the flat plate, and at the very top there's a turnaround where you can circle back down. There's handicap parking throughout on each level right near the lobbies. The fifth floor is the office part. Again, most of the geometry of a building like this, in order to get it right, is really working around your vertical circulation core, where your elevators are and your lobbies and things like that. That's going to drive a great deal of this. It has to be worked out in the right spot in a parking garage, and then take that all the way up through the building. So it's not exactly in the center. It's not appropriate to necessarily put it always exactly in the center. It's closer to the lobby, but it's about a third of the way back in the overall plan. This office layout is showing a very large office that fronts onto Kirkpatrick, a smaller office suite here off of Baird, and another one to the rear. We don't have necessarily a specific tenant at this point in time, but there's over 26,000 square feet of leasable office on this floor. So that can either be leased out and planned for a single tenancy, or it's already pre-designed so it can be worked with multiple tenancies. And there is a small, as you saw in the video, there's a small outdoor terrace that's accessible as well. This is the sixth floor. The sixth floor is the first residential floor. It's above this area, so you can see it's starting setback again. And what happens is that there's a good part of the building really revolves around that vertical circulation core. And then as you get closer to New Street, the building sets back dramatically. This is on the sixth floor. This is where that 10,000 square foot amenity terrace is. So there's seating out here. We put the pool all the way on the end. One of the reasons for the pool being on the end is it gets the best daylight all day long, and the shaft of the tower doesn't put the pool into shade. Around the corner, we have an area that is fenced in, and it's a dog run. It's one of the most popular amenities in high-rise living in urban environments, because people want to have their pets and they don't necessarily want to have to go all the way down and out. This allows them to put them, their pet in a secure location, get some outdoor exercise while they can lounge at the pool nearby. So what we have here on this floor is 11 units, and then fitness areas, yoga studios, there are various meeting rooms. This is your screening movie theater. So when you come off here, this is really all of your amenity space. This is social central for the residents of the building. And it is very much an indoor space, but it's very much also an outdoor space as well. This one would be a 3. Oh, that was, I don't know how to write down onto a video. So this is A4. That is a rendering taken from a spot roughly about here, having just entered the Amenity Terrace. So you can see, the idea of this is a flat roof, but there would be up on risers or pedestals, there would be either planks or tiles, terrace type of thing, where there's green roof elements, there's seating elements. You can see there's a screen TV. Behind that would be an outdoor, and the pool's actually further out than that. So there's a lot going on up in that area. On the floors above this, what you have is, on the typical floor, you have 18 apartments per floor. You have the core, the utility, the trash areas, but you don't have other amenities on those upper floors until you get to the very top floor. So this is the 20th floor, and this would be a 5. Again, the top floor has 16 units, And this corner, which kind of faces off to the to the southeast, that is what it is given over as a common amenity to all the residents. So there's this indoor area, which is what we call the Sky Lounge. That may have a little bit of cooking in there, private dining, that kind of thing. Very nicely appointed indoor lounge. And then right outside of that is an outdoor version of it. So you see A5 is a rendering of what that might be. You're up there, and you know, this is one of the things that really attracts people to high-rise downtown living is the views that you can get. So what this allows the applicant to do is for somebody that happens to be on the 7th floor, not necessarily with the best view, they still are able to participate and experience one of the really premier views in all of New Brunswick. So, laundry, some of the basic stuff. Laundry is handled individually within units. There are no common laundry rooms. Trash is handled internally via a chute, separated. I believe a recycling plan has already been submitted. It is compacted. It goes and is serviced off that ground floor loading area. The haulers will determine specifically, how long it takes to service that. But there's enough room for the trash truck literally to come indoors off the street and service that. The building is entirely handicapped accessible throughout. There are no full accessible units, but in accordance to fair housing laws and the state codes, any unit in this building has the ability to be easily adapted because it's designed from day one with the necessary clearances and door widths and things like that. The entire building is fully fire suppressed. I know one of the comments was addressed fire suppression. It's going to have a full sprinkler system and standpipes. There'll be the intercommunication system that now is really required in buildings like this to make sure that first responders don't have a communication blackout if there's a problem. So one of the things that is quite good about buildings of this current generation is the life safety systems are really of a high level. Okay, that takes us through the building. There's one variance that I do want to put these down. There's one variance that I do want to address with you. And that's the sky plane. This exhibit was part of your packet, sheet A18 of it. What a sky plane does is it takes a vertical, it's measured vertically along the property line of public streets to a height of 40 feet, and then it starts tapering back at a shallow pitch. I believe it's 10 degrees. Is that correct? Good. 10 degrees. What you can see is on New Street, it goes up. Our entire building is well within the sky plane. We don't have a problem on New Street. On Bayard Street, the sky plane goes up and tapers back. Our whole building is within the sky plane on Bayard Street. We have no problem on Bayard Street. And part of that is that setback that really goes to respect and create a very dynamic corner. What we do have is a sky plane encroachment along Kirkpatrick Street. And it happens in two places. Number one, it happens with the upper floors of the garage. Part of that is geometrical because you can't really step back parking garages because cars and driveways are the size that they are. So that is simply a function of needing necessary parking. The planner will also talk about how the sky plane itself is really related to the lot dimensions and the lot width. In order to fulfill what is intended for this site, for a site this size, that your zone and master plan envisions, we need to create a certain critical mass. And what goes with that is a certain bulk of building. And while the majority of Kirkpatrick Street is well beyond the sky plane, there is a slight encroachment there. I believe it's 7 feet at the top of that lower encroachment. And then this forward piece of the shaft to the residential tower is encroaching. At the very, very top, it's 28 feet back in. Now, what's the practical impact of that? I would submit to you that the practical impact is not that much. What you have on Kirkpatrick Street is the garage height is very much compatible with the height of Civic Square. And it's very, very complementary in its streetscape. And then as you go up above, there's really, because it's only for that front portion, that's driven by the geometry of the site, where the vertical circulation is in the building, and you have to have a certain amount of mass of your building around that vertical circulation. Once we got beyond that, we were then able to push it back, and you can see that the resulting encroachment. We believe that the building, despite this encroachment, is well within the spirit and the keeping and the intent of your master plan and your ordinance. And again, the planner will speak to that. Unless I missed something.
I just want to ask you one question, Steve. Because I think to understand that variance, also we go back to the bulk variance, which is the lot width. And since you're here, and I could ask you or I could ask others, I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
We could go back
Because I
to...
know you stand on the left.
If we can go back, I think it might even be A1, where you can identify where that lot width variance is. Because again, it's one of the things that drives these variances.
So Kirkpatrick Street is a straight boundary. What you have with the rest of the lot, again, it's 8 assembled parcels. You have, this is where your lot width is the narrowest. Because at this point, when it bumps back further, that's not where the variance is required. But you're supposed to be, I believe, 150 feet.
Right.
And we're only 109. Or 109 feet of frontage along Bayard Street. So, but once we get back here, we get a little bit deeper. So, wanting and really needing to accentuate this corner, that's going to drive where the primary entrance elements are. That's also going to drive where the vertical circulation is. The vertical circulation, working with the geometries of parking garage, within the context of that lot width, is going to then, its natural result is going to be on a taller building, an encroachment of the sky plane.
Thank you. And no further questions for Mr. Shaw?
Do you have a rendition at all of what is it going to look like from Kirkpatrick Street? I mean, you've done a great job where I can see on Meyer, you've got, you know, ins and outs,
That's why I bring these. I'm going to refer to one of to the simple elevations that you've had in your advanced package, sheet A14, and it was in color in what you have. This is the full view of Kirkpatrick Street. One of the reasons why we don't really do a rendering like this, okay, it's not possible to really stand back and see a building like this in its full elevation. But this is the required drawings, as you know. But what you see here is, this is a setback in the entrance area. You have some of the lobby that comes back, your loading area, your retail bay, your garage entrances. These are your transformer areas, and finally the bike storage area. That's at the ground floor. But what you can see is that sky plane encroachment would be the top of, really the top floor of the garage, and then this portion, as it goes up, that's the shaft there that's going to encroach on the sky plane. So you can see certainly here the way the glass is used to make a strong delineation from the base to the tower above, and also the strong vertical glass that's being used to create that statement at the corner.
now will there be trees or anything so that, you know, pedestrian traffic walk next to it?
Well,
Kind of soften that tree.
I'll let the engineer talk about the landscaping and the trees, because much of that is controlled by your ordinance.
Part of what the intent of we tried to do when we wrote the sky plane regulation is to make it have more pedestrian feel, that you don't have that wall going
Right.
straight up there. So that's what we were trying to do, and at least at the lower portions of the building, they're mostly meeting that, so you don't get that feel of the building looming over top.
I have one question question, I don't know if it's appropriate for you, but when tenants are moving in and out, where does that take place?
Well, the tenant moving in and out, that loading bay, that can accommodate moving size vehicles, and it has a direct access to the back door of the freight elevator that services every floor. So that's for the move-ins and move-outs of not only the residents, but also any changes in the office fit out and things like that. So typically, as a building like this gets leased up, there's a lot of that traffic. Over the life of a building like that, there's always a certain amount of turnover, but it's not an everyday occurrence. But when it does happen, and management will deal with it, it'll happen through that loading bay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I will now call Mr. Leslie Walker for testimony.
Can you raise your right hand and spell your last name, please?
Leslie Walker, W-A-L-K-E-R.
And do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Mr. Walker, you are a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in that capacity, you are familiar with the civil engineering components of the project and the building and the proposal to the board this evening?
Yes, sir.
If you could please, if you could give the board the benefit of your professional qualifications and experience.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Walker, you've been before numerous boards in the state of New Jersey, have you not?
Yes.
And you're a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey. If your credentials since the last time you appeared before a board in the state of New Jersey where you were accepted as an expert, have they changed at all in any way?
No, they have not.
Madam Chair, I am familiar with Mr. Walker's prior work, and as his credentials have not changed, I would ask that the board recognize him as well.
Okay, we'll accept you as an expert witness.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, again, I'm going to just allow you to go through the engineering aspects of the project. I know a lot of the project is the building, which is why we went first with the architect. But if you could just spend some time going through the utility associated with the building. And the question with regard to landscaping, I think we want you to touch on that as well.
Okay, so as described prior, the site sits along Kirkpatrick Street between Baird and New. The plan that's in front of you right now is a kind of a combination of the landscaping plan, and I also turned on the utilities so that we could point those out on our plan. On Baird Street, the main lobby kind of sets back in, and then in front of the 3 retail spaces and between the public sidewalk and those retail spaces, we put some plantings, some planters, there's a couple of stairs, and this creates a kind of a plaza area, so it'd be like a nice amenity for tables, chairs, some outdoor space for the retail tenants. As discussed, there are some street trees along Baird. Those are all magnolias. And then there are some shrubs, some boxwood shrubs and planters, and then some ability for like seasonal color or whatever that could switch over. Following down along our longest frontage, Kirkpatrick, once you get past the lobby, you have the entrance to the loading area, trash, people moving in and out, deliveries, a retail space in the middle of the building, your driveway exit, the 2 electric bulbs, and then the bike storage and repair area. 7 street trees along Kirkpatrick, and those are in tree wells, and those are Zelkovas, tree-based Zelkovas. Getting out around the corner, there's a church building on the corner that is not part of the project. We have a small frontage along New Street, and that's where the majority of our utilities are coming in. I say majority because over on Kirkpatrick, the 2 PSE&G electric bulbs, they'll be fed by an underground electric line that'll come off of a pole that's just past our property. We had met out there with PSE&G representatives and discussed eliminating all the poles, and they said that while this pole further up where our driveway is proposed can go, this one down here needs to stay. And it has to do with the amount of service, transformers, whatever are on that pole that they need there to service the building and the rest of the neighborhood. Same thing on Baird. There's 2 utility poles on Baird. The one immediately in the middle of the front of our building, that one can go. I think that serves only the couple of buildings right at the corner that we're taking down. But there's one down at the corner that services not only some buildings right next door, but also across the street, and that was one that they had to take a look at and see whether or not that pole could stay or go. But ideally, we'd like to have no poles. Down on New Street is where all the other utility connections are. We're bringing in twin 8-inch water mains, one for domestic potable water and one for fire. Then we have a 10-inch sanitary sewer line that'll tie into the sewer in the middle of New Street. We have a 14-inch PVC storm line. We're proposing a new inlet on New Street, on the project side of New Street, and then tying it across the street. And the reason we had to do that is the only inlet anywhere on our frontage is just past our site, right here, and that only has a 6-inch PVC pipe out. It's really small, and I was shocked to find that there wasn't anything else there. But all this water from Kirkpatrick to New Street, it was all going into a 6-inch pipe. So I don't know if there's been history of flooding there, but it seems like that would be problematic. So there's a large channel storm sewer on the other side that we're proposing to take our small roof leader into. Then the only other utility is gas, connecting into the existing gas main in New Street, running it up along the building into the gas meters on the back side of the building near the generator. Now that we're on the west side of the building, the generator that was talked about before is located in the middle. We're proposing a few trees to kind of break up the look of that area back there. It's kind of utilitarian. And then this parking lot that would be down here, this is the New Jersey Blood Center. This is their parking lot here where the proposed plan is set up. Around the entire site, all the curb, right now there's 7 buildings of parking lots and all that. So there's a lot of driveway openings that have to be removed to convert to sidewalk and vice versa. So all the sidewalk and curb is going to be taken out and replaced. Like I said, these are planter boxes up in here, and then tree wells for the trees along Kirkpatrick. All the sidewalk will be ADA compliant, so there's no issues there. We're upgrading the crosswalk condition at the corner. I think that's it.
If I could just ask you one question, Lizina, I think you can have the information. I know Steve touched upon the lot width and the variance associated with the lot width, but I just want to make sure we have in the record, what is the overall square footage of the site itself?
It's over 50,000 square feet.
It's over 50,000 square feet. I just wanted to make sure we have it.
As far as stormwater management, the site is nearly 100% impervious now with 7 buildings and parking lots and all that. We're actually slightly reducing that impervious coverage and making slight reductions to runoff from the site. So that allows us to, there's 2 options in stormwater management. One is to make reductions for 2 10 and 100-year storms. The other one is to maintain not only the peak runoff rates, but the runoff volume from the site, and to never go higher than what is existing now. And that's how we address the stormwater management on the site. Sanitary sewer and water demand, we submitted a report earlier today, and the building it demands about 49,000 gallons a day of water and sanitary sewer on average.
I have no further questions, Mr. Walker.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
At this time, I would call Mr. Charles Olivo.
Can you raise your right hand and state your name, spell your last name?
Charles Olivo, O-L-I, as in Victor.
Do you swear that the truth in this matter?
I do.
Mr. Olivo, I've never seen you from this angle.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
Mr. Tubbs, I know that you said have your credentials changed since you last been here?
They have not.
Okay, well, accept them as next.
And for the record, he is a professional engineer with a focus on traffic. I'll make sure the public knows that.
Okay.
Mr. Olivo, you obviously are familiar with the project, and you had an opportunity to do a traffic study and analysis of the impacts of the traffic potentially in the area.
Yes, I have.
If you could please tell us the methodology by which you go about that, and I'll allow you to go through your analysis and your conclusions, and I will ask you with regard to one comment, I think, from Mr. Carley, but also with regard to the parking variance that's being requested, if you could provide testimony for that parking variance.
Certainly. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. As Mr. Kelso has introduced, we have prepared a traffic impact study for the project. And as part of preparing a traffic impact study for a project of this nature, what we do first is we look at an existing inventory of the roadway conditions as this property sits bound by Bayard, Kirkpatrick, and New Street to the various boundaries cordoning off the site as it is located here within the city. I'm referring, generally speaking, to A1, which is the site plan exhibit that Mr. Walker has spoken to as well. So it starts with that existing inventory, and then what we also take a look at is the nature of the development or redevelopment project that is being proposed. And as you've heard, there certainly has been a lot of conscientiousness and thought put into the design from an architectural perspective and also from a site engineering perspective here to create a mixed-use project that would have synergy with this area and really the region in terms of where it is located within the city. From a traffic and a parking perspective, this does have profound effects on the infrastructure, and it actually has a mitigating effect on the nature of traffic and parking generation associated with a project of this nature. And what I mean by that is historically, when projects were built that were comprised of retail, office, and residential, it was very common that they would be built separate from one another, with separate parking fields, with separate amenities, and as a result of that, you often had to drive between them. So the parking lot that was associated with residential, office, and retail would obviously have their own separate conditions for parking as well as for access for driveways for vehicular movement. And that tended to create very vehicular or car-centric types of development projects. By building a mixed-use project of this nature that is very closely related and proximate to transit-oriented type uses, which are certainly the train station, which is about a 6 to 7 minute walk from here. You have a number of NJ Transit buses, both county bus systems and state systems that run through this area. And most importantly, there are a number of attributes of this project, as you've heard from the developer, the architect, and the site engineer, that lend themselves to walkability. A lot of the project and a lot of what's being put forth in terms of investment along all of these street frontages is meant to increase the pedestrian saturation of this area by providing amenities and also providing streetscape improvements as well as street trees, all things that we enjoy as we walk down city streets. In addition to that, you have a mix of structures and parking and access on the site today. And what happens when you assemble all of these properties from a traffic and a parking perspective is you're able to better control and organize where you're accessing to and from a property. Along Kirkpatrick Street today, you have approximately 5 driveways, and these driveways are broken up along this stretch. And you also have driveways across the street for parking facilities for other uses within the area. What would happen as a result of redeveloping this project, and you've heard this from the architect as well as the site engineers, along Kirkpatrick Street, you would effectively have one ingress and egress driveway for the majority of your vehicular traffic, with an additional curb cut just purely from a utilitarian perspective to bring service and loading vehicles in and out. So the expectation there is that driveway would be rather infrequently used on a daily basis, with more of your turnover occurring at the driveway that would allow for ingress and egress into the residential as well as the employee parking areas. In addition to that, as the property extends out to New Street, we thought it would be advantageous, and it certainly works from a traffic perspective, to have a 2-way access point that is well spaced from the intersection of Kirkpatrick Street and New Street as well. What this does is allow for traffic to reach an equilibrium as it's coming into the site and then also leaving the site, rather than forcing it or constraining it to only one access point on either frontage. By doing that, you're able to break up the traffic demand and allow it to travel, ultimately using more access points than, again, if you were to just simply force it down to one access. And in addition to that, that's more of a focus on the car-related traffic associated with the project. Obviously, pedestrians are able to access the building from a number of different locations with the project, which the project architect has spoken about. So it's important that we're accommodating vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, and then there are over 60 bike parking stalls or bike parking facilities that are provided within the building itself, which obviously sends a loud message about trying to have a different type of modal split in traffic than you would expect in most buildings that are built in more suburban areas. The city has an excellent street network and grid that can be utilized by bicyclist traffic in addition to vehicular traffic, and certainly the trend is moving more towards that in downtown areas across the state. Now, after looking at what is being proposed as part of the project, we then take a look at the traffic volumes that we've counted under existing conditions. We've studied the intersections of New Street and Kirkpatrick Street and Byard Street and Kirkpatrick Street as well to take a look at the traffic that's traveling through the network today. What we then do is we fast forward to a future condition without the project built, and that's referred to as a no-build condition. We are aware of other projects that are proposed to be constructed in the area. Specifically, we've taken a look at the Cultural Center redevelopment project, and we've added that traffic to the network as well. There have been traffic studies and things done for that project, but it's important to look at a future condition with development and redevelopment in the area, not just our project. In addition to that, we then look at a build condition, which compares a future condition with everything else being built, and then also our project as well. We've taken a very small credit for the walkability or the pedestrian nature of the site, the public transit usage that we would expect here, the bicyclist traffic as well. And so we've estimated trip generation for this project based on the amount of residential units, the office component, as well as that street level retail component that is being proposed. And what we have found and conveyed through the network is approximately 120 peak hour trips in the morning and about 145 peak hour trips in the afternoon. And we've distributed that volume based on where truly we expect this traffic to go. What gives us a very good indication of that are the traffic counts that we've conducted under existing conditions to see the flow patterns that occur both during a weekday commuter rush period, generally from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., and the weekday commuter rush period during the 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. window. So we've taken a look at those peak hour conditions to understand whether or not this project would have a significant impact on the traffic delays, the volume to capacity ratios on the roadway, and what we found within the build condition is that we would generally see the levels of service and delay values that you would see in the no-build condition, which gives us comfort when we look at whether or not a project moves the needle, so to speak, in changing the way that you would drive through this network in a future condition with the project built. Generally speaking, from no build to build, we see similar levels of service, nothing that degrades to a level that I think requires mitigation or would cause a categorical change in the way, again, that you drive through the roadway network based on the existing and the future condition without this project built. Now, I know there was a comment about the nature of the Kirkpatrick Street and New Street intersection. In most cases, as traffic engineers and designers, we love to have 90-degree intersections. In this particular case, if you were to look at the heavy black line at the southeast corner of where the church building is located, you'll see that that property line comes pretty much right out to the very corner of where the street intersection today. And effectively, that is what does not allow you to round the curve in such a way that would allow you to bring the approach in slightly more at a 90-degree angle. Now, there is a very large and wide pedestrian area for the church. That's where the doors are to the church, so I understand certainly why it's configured in that way. But if the city were to engage the church at some level, I have seen conditions where there is a radius placed at a corner property line that would allow for that type of improvement to be made. Obviously, this project does not control that corner, but that is what leads to some of the delay as you come out to make the right turn. You do have to make a harder right turn to come out onto New Street from Kirkpatrick Street. In terms of level of service and the actual volumes, we do not expect a significant amount of volume to leave this site and make the right turn. And we also did not see a very heavy volume making the right turn during existing conditions, well under 100 peak hour trips during both the morning and the evening. But my suggestion, if the city is looking into potential improvements in this area, is by taking a bit of a piece of that corner where it comes together at a point that may allow for some geometric improvements at the intersection itself. Now, from a parking perspective, after we look at the traffic and we understand that there would not be a significant impact on the roadway network, after looking at the two intersections that I previously mentioned, we look at the parking. And within a mixed-use building, we've worked hand in hand with the project team to make sure that the parking is managed in a certain way where you'd be able to have both the residential as well as the employees associated with the retail and the office component of the project park within this structured parking. Today you have a number of surface lots. As you're aware, this area is surrounded by parking authority parking garages. New Street is located just across the street and down to the west, just off the page. Morris Street is about a 2 to 3 block walk, and then you have the Wellness Garage as well. The Wellness Garage provides well over 1,200 parking stalls and is a short 2 block walk from the site. Morris Street and New Street provide on the order of 800 and 400 parking stalls. Some of these garages are busy during the day based on discussions that I've had with the parking authority. Mitch Karen, we've spoken about the utilization of the garages. New Street from about 8 to 4 is filled with employees of county buildings and other buildings throughout the area. But at about 5 o'clock, the parking really does open up. So if you had visitors to any of the uses that you would have within this redevelopment project, they could utilize the New Street building. Based on the discussions that we had, the Wellness Garage has more than adequate accommodations for any parking demand that may need to use this particular area. But with that being said, it is my opinion, based on reviewing the plan that has been put together, which includes 273 stalls physically on the site, that would be able to accommodate the demand that we would expect to be generated by this project itself. Should there be visitors or those that do not have key fob access to the garage itself, there's on-street parking, and as I mentioned, there's a number of parking decks in very close proximity, and that's exactly what you want when you build projects like this, because it has the effect of spreading traffic out rather than consolidating it and concentrating it to just this site. In addition to that, you have excellent characteristics of shared parking here. If you think about the nature of parking demand for residential, office, and retail, residential demand is typically at its highest overnight. Generally speaking, people come home after work, they park their car sits in a parking stall overnight, and then they drive on their way to work during the morning commuter peak period. That is effectively the reverse of an office, which is that those employees come in during the course of the day, their car sits in a parking stall throughout the typical course of the day, and then they would leave once their time is done at work, and then the residential would come back in and fill the garage. This is exactly the type of complementary use that you would want to see within a mixed-use building and within a parking deck such as this. Retail is generally street-level retail, and so you find that throughout the city, and most of the time people would circulate through the general street network and look for parking on street, or if they're spending a little bit more time shopping throughout the area, George and some of the other roadways, restaurants, and the other offerings. As I mentioned, most of the garages, if not all of the garages in this area, have adequate parking for hourly parking and things of that nature. So from a parking perspective, this supply of 273 parking stalls would be adequate to accommodate the demand that we would expect to occur as a result of the synergy of the residential, the office, and the commercial. So from both a traffic perspective and a parking perspective, the design has been created in such a way to accommodate these various uses without impact to the roadway of the street network.
Mr. Levy, just one question. I know there was a comment with regard to there are a certain number of spaces that are 8 by 18, 9 by 18, and that would be a waiver request.
Yes.
I know we've done that in many projects. If you could just comment on
Yes, the Urban Land Institute, the Institute of Transportation Engineers puts forth guidelines with regard to parking dimensions and what would be adequate for this type of mix of uses. Parking dimensions that are on the order that Mr. Kelso mentioned are certainly adequate to accommodate parked vehicles here, particularly when you have longer dwell times. If you have very quick turnover, coffee shops, convenience stores where you have turnover every 3 to 4 minutes, that's typically where you look for a wider and a deeper parking stall. Since these vehicles will be here for an extended amount of time, those lesser dimensions would be more than adequate to accommodate the size of the vehicles and the turnover expected without conflicting with other vehicles.
that. Thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Beagle.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I will call our final witness, Mr. Keenan Hughes.
Can you raise your right hand and state your name, spell your last name for me?
Keenan Hughes, Hughes.
And do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
I do.
So, please have I know you've been before this board several times. Have your credentials changed since the last time you've been here?
No, they have not.
Okay, well, let's set you as an expert.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes, for the record, you're a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. is that
Yes.
correct? And in that capacity, we have requested that we review with you the requests for the variances that are before the board this evening. There are 4. If you could please, if you could go through your analysis of those variances and give the board and the public the benefit of your conclusions with respect to the support for those variances.
Absolutely. So I think this project is a little bit different than many other variance applications that the zoning board sees in that the use and the density, the FAR, and in fact the height here are really consistent with what's envisioned by the master plan and the zoning ordinance. In my opinion, we're dealing with somewhat of a quirk in the zoning ordinance in that the C4 provides for this graduated density concept where the larger the assemblage you have, the taller the building can be, and the greater density of development is allowed. So here we have an overall assemblage of property which is 57,103 square feet, which places it within the highest category just on a pure land area basis. So anything over 40,000 square feet, you're allowed 250 feet in height and an FAR of 15, which this proposed building complies with both of those. However, again, it's worth repeating, the lot width along Bayard Street, 109 feet, is really the trigger here, which pushes us back into the 20,000 square foot sort of level, which means that the height that's allowed is 150 feet as the zoning ordinance is interpreted. So the variance is required for lot width, height, the sky exposure plane along Kirkpatrick Street, and then also the number of parking spaces. So I'll start by talking about height, both in terms of the absolute height and then also the sky exposure plane. The standard for a D6 variance, which is what we're requesting here, is that was set forth in the Randolph Town Center case, and that's to demonstrate that the site is capable of accommodating a greater height than permitted by ordinance. I think this is a unique case in that the proposed height is actually less than what the ordinance envisions for a property of this size. But in my opinion, the deficient lot width along Bayard Street really doesn't have any connection in terms of impacts to how the building is sort of felt by a pedestrian on the street or impacts other properties in the surrounding area. That's really for 4 reasons. The first is that the property itself actually does eventually get deeper and conform to 150 feet towards the middle of the property. Secondly, the Bayard Street frontage complies with the sky exposure plane requirement required along that street. Thirdly, the building itself is set back approximately 20 feet from the right-of-way. as Mr. Schock explained, in respect of the post office building across Kirkpatrick Street. I think that's really evident in Exhibit A2 here too, a really nice, welcoming, pedestrian-oriented environment there. And then finally, there are upper story stepbacks provided throughout the building. And on Bayard Street, the stepback at the 6th floor in particular, I think is really critical in terms of how the building is felt to a pedestrian on the street. So those are mitigating factors in terms of evaluating the impact of the height variance, the absolute height variance, which is being requested at the narrowest point of the property along Bayard Street. So back to the D6 proof, I think the proposed building height can be accommodated on this property without creating any substantial detrimental impacts to the public good or impairment of the zone plan. Also, in terms of the sky exposure plane, and I'll bring back up if I can find it. Let's see here. There we are. So this is sheet A18 from your set, but this really represents the variance here that we're seeking, or the deviation which exists along Kirkpatrick Street. This is also related to the lot width, as it was explained by Mr. Schock, and I believe this variance can be justified on C1 hardship grounds. And the purpose of the sky exposure plane is to ensure adequate light and air is provided, and also to ensure that taller buildings do not have an overly imposing or massive feel, particularly to pedestrians at the street level and just from an overall visual standpoint. So what's important to note here as you evaluate the proposed building is that the new street facade complies with the sky exposure plane, the Bayard Street facade complies, and it's really just a portion where the deviation exists along Kirkpatrick Street. And due to the width of the lot, as the property gets close to Bayard Street, the geometry of the parking garage and the location of the vertical circulation core, it becomes practically challenging to accommodate the full sky exposure plane within that area of the building and to still accommodate this double-loaded corridor residential tower. There are a number of stepbacks and offsets provided throughout the building, which helps to mitigate the impact of that. And also the building mass here completely diminishes above, I think it's the 6th story along Kirkpatrick Street. So whereas a conforming building could really fill out this mass here, theoretically, it does not, which I think provides some more light and air along that particular street frontage. Kirkpatrick is also a relatively narrow street, so in my opinion, this deviation here is not something that's really going to be felt at the street level. It is certainly at certain times of the day, with the sun moving across the sky, it is possible that there will be additional shadows casted to the north of the building, but in my opinion, that's really not substantial in terms of impacts within the context of the overall project. And all other setback coverage and other requirements are satisfied under the proposed building. So in my opinion, there's no substantial detriments to the public good or impairment of the zone plan in connection with that variance. The lot width variance, again, this is an irregularly shaped assemblage of property, which does happen to have its narrowest point along Bayard Street. That's what triggers the lot width variance. The applicant was not able to acquire additional properties to cure that condition, but I think it's important to evaluate this within the overall context of the property. It's 57,000 square feet, whereas the ordinance is really encouraging assemblages of at least 40,000. So this is really, talking about critical mass in terms of accommodating development in the downtown. And I think that overall size of the property is really the key consideration in terms of evaluating the impact of that variance, and also the fact that the central portion of the property actually conforms in terms of the width. Finally, in terms of the parking variance, I agree with Mr. Olivo that this is really a textbook example of shared parking in practice, where you have the residential and office uses in balance. There are 273 total spaces, 262 residential units, and I would just note that the vast majority of those are studio and one-bedroom units. And then for daytime parking, the office space of over 26,000 square feet. The retail will function like other downtown retail establishments. Would anticipate a lot of pedestrian-oriented customer traffic here, or visitors who park in one location downtown and might visit a few different or make multiple stops within the downtown district. It's really not intended to be destination type retail. And if it is, there are other public parking facilities in this area, as you heard from Mr. Olivo. The Wellness Center deck, the New Street deck, all within one block of the property. There's also 66 bike storage stalls provided. So this is really about a building that offers a downtown lifestyle living choice. I mean, people choose to live in a building like this. They're not typically two-car households. You know, a lot of one-car households are people who might be walking to work using public transportation. They use their vehicles. Some do commute by car, there's no question about it, but two-car households are highly unusual, and if you have two cars, maybe this isn't the right fit for you in terms of lifestyle. So, in my opinion, it is a better planning alternative to limit the amount of finite land resources the city has in its downtown. You know, devoting that to an oversupply of parking is really counter to good planning principles. So in summary, as I stated earlier, applicants are not here requesting a traditional use variance. It's just this D6 height variance, which brings the application before this board. This is a use and density that is envisioned for a property of this size. And I think the relief that's being requested is really quite minimal when you look at the overall scale and context here of this project. The criteria for the D6 height variance are satisfied and that the property can clearly accommodate any problems associated with that deviation. The sky exposure plane C variance is really driven by the irregular shape of the property and the geometries of the parking garage and the vertical circulation core. So in my opinion, there's a C1 justification for that variance. And then the two other C variances, in my view, can be justified on flexible C2 grounds, in that the lot width variance is really limited here in scope and does not result in an overly massive or imposing building, and the parking variance is perfectly appropriate for this downtown location and given the shared parking opportunity here. So taken together, the C variances, in as much as they are integral to facilitating this overall property or project advance purposes, E and G of the municipal land use law, because this is a project that is very much appropriate for this location, and also in terms of the proposed density of development. It's in fact, consistent with the master plan and the zoning ordinance. And actually, for that reason, I believe it also furthers purpose A, furthering the general welfare, due to its consistency with the master plan vision for the C4 district downtown. So with that, I think that concludes my direct testimony. So anything further?
I have no further questions for Mr. Hughes.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
And that completes our presentation.
Okay. So at this time, we'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak to this application?
Yes.
Please come forward.
Sir, can you raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last name for me, please?
Jorge Diaz, D-I-A-Z, Jr.
And do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Beautiful building and beautiful from Brunswick. And I have a question regarding the tenants, the current tenants. One of the questions, the initial question is what's going to happen with the current tenants now that have a lease for a year plus? Because if I'm not mistaken, I heard this gentleman say that the construction is going to start early October. Early 2018, right? And currently, I know that there's current tenants in that building that just signed the lease for a year.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I don't believe there are any tenants that do have a one-year lease, okay? Most of the tenants, if not all of the tenants, have no leases or they're on a 30-day, month-to-month tenancy. Most of the tenants have been advised that this structure will be built at some point in time, and our leasing strategy has been very careful to take that into account. There are only a few residential tenancies in the whole block of A properties. We will abide by all the requirements by law in order to see an orderly transition where they are moved out and their rights are protected. We've done that before in redevelopment projects. So it won't come to a shock. Nobody's going to be thrown out. And one of the things that we have to do in order to bring this out of the ground is we have to take the tenancy in account. Okay, we have to work with them so that our schedule and their schedule aren't in conflict. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Another question. Earlier, correct me if I'm mistaken, you said that the tenants have been notified?
Tenants are aware of our development plans, okay? So many of the tenants actually, we purchased the property from them. So part of that process is that just recently we purchased one property. They understand what our development plans are. Some of the attorneys on the block who purchased those properties. So they're aware that eventually there's going to be a transition where they sold their properties to us. They occupy those properties. And they realize at some point in time, which we will better define once we are able to obtain approvals. If we're able to obtain our approval now, then we can start the discussion with them. So this thing is not going to happen tomorrow. We still have construction plans to develop. We have a lot of work in front of us. No one thing is going to override the rights of anybody else, including the tenants.
In that case, I was left out. I was never informed of that. And I have 2 spaces at 90 Bear Street.
2 what spaces?
Leases.
Which leases are those?
Suite 2C and 1A.
And what kind of units are
And
they?
I've actually had some money invested to open up a gentleman's grooming salon at 1A.
And what type of use is it going to be for? What type of use did you lease it for?
For an office at 92 at 2C. And for a gentleman's grooming salon at 1A.
Now, who did you lease it
From 16 Van Dyke, LLC.
Well, I would suggest to myself that I check your lease, and I would suggest that you check your lease and that we discuss it.
Okay. Yeah. And what's so it's early 2018?
I can't project it as being early, late, or middle of 2018. It will be 2018.
Right. And you did say that all tenants have been informed.
To my best of my knowledge, yes.
All right. All right. Thank you. I was informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Good evening.
Raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last name for me, please.
My name is Arie, A-R-I-E, last name Behar, B-E-H-A-R. I'm the owner of the building known as 96 and 100
Do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
I'm sorry?
Do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
Can you hear?
Do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. I'm here to support this project. It's a beautiful building. I think that for many years the development has been in the other side of town. It's something that this part of town, Kirkpatrick, Bayard Street, New Street, really need that. I'm very encouraged by the developer that is going to add some retail into Bayard Street, which has almost no retail in that part of town. If anybody take the train and walk around from the train into Judge Kilmer, it's kind of dark, intimidating at times. So I think this development will bring some life and light into the town. It's a beautiful building, and it will change the city in many ways. So I'm all for it and encourage the board to support this application. I know there will be some bumps along the road, but it's that's what it is with development. It's going to be just wonderful for town. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak to this application?
Charlie, can you raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last name for me, please?
Charlie Pratt, K-R-A-T-O-V-I-L.
You swear to tell the truth in this matter?
Yes, I do, sir. Good evening, everybody. For the record, Charles Prattville from New Brunswick today. How many buildings are going to be demolished to make way for this structure?
7.
7. And that includes 1 on New Street, 2 on Bayard, and the rest on Kirkpatrick?
In a parking lot. as Mr.
Okay, well, I'll start by saying I have some very fond memories of 90 Bayard Street. I actually was the home office of Empower Our Neighborhoods many years ago, so you'll have to let me grab one of the bricks or something. But I'd like to know, what's the total cost of the approximate cost of building this?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 million.
And does that include the land acquisition, or is that on top of it?
Well, the range would be 150, 140, so it could or could not.
Okay, can you tell me how much has been spent on the land acquisition?
Approximately $7 million.
$7 million, okay. And all the properties have been purchased by the applicant?
We own all the properties in fee.
Okay. What does that mean? I'm sorry.
It means we own all the properties.
Okay. I was a little concerned about the price to rent. It seems like it'll be a lovely place to live one day. I might like to live there one day, but those prices are very expensive. Can you please ask the applicant if they have any plans to offer affordable housing for low and moderate income individuals?
No, this is a market rate project. We don't require to have affordable housing by any ordinance or requirements, governmental requirements, and also we don't require it in order to obtain our financing. So we've chosen to go this route. The rents that you say are expensive are in keeping with the development costs and the development plans. Also, you got to remember that these rents that I mentioned are going to be rents we're going to lease today, but they're going to be leased 18 months out from when we start the project. So these rents may be as much as 24 to 30 months in the future. So we're trying to project forward and give you the proper information and not try to come in with a lower stated rent or an overstated rent. We believe these are the correct rents for this project.
Thank you, and I appreciate the thorough presentation. Can I ask whether it'll be LEED certified? How green is this building going to be?
Well, I think if you listened to the architect, you saw the video that he's provided. It's not going to be LEED certified, but there's going to be many elements that will contribute to the LEED criteria that we would get a lot of points if we were going for LEED certification.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell me what will be the maximum occupancy of the building? Are all the bedrooms capable of holding two tenants or not?
Well, there's 30 studios, so that would limit to some degree. And then there are 70 one-bedrooms, so you can start to figure out the occupants based on that. The two bedrooms would have the maximum occupancy, so it's hard to gauge. Generally, most of them, two bedrooms will definitely have two people. One bedrooms will have one person, some of them will have two persons. Studios tend to be more one-person type of operation. So the mathematical computation, the planner and the traffic consultant could tell you better based on traffic and all of that. But it could go in many different directions.
But it could be more than 300 residents of the building, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then I'm also a little concerned about the traffic impact on this congested area. I know Mr. Olivo testified they're accounting for the huge Performing Arts Center project, which makes sense, but there's also a project 96-100 Bayard Street that was approved I think by this board last year, maybe a year or two ago. Was that factored in? Should that be?
Well, my traffic engineer can address that. But what I'm going to say is he took into other projects besides that, but he can answer.
In addition to the cultural center project, we did look at just general ambient and background growth inclusive of other projects.
Thank you. Is this, where's the closest bus stop to this building? Is there bus service nearby? How close?
I'm not sure.
George Street?
Yeah.
Burger King? Yeah.
No. There's a bus that comes on New Street.
George Street.
Brunswick shuttle goes along Patterson Street up by the Super Fresh, the Suburban Transit bus stop, which is the main intercity bus stop in the city, is about 2 blocks from this site. And of course, along George Street, you have, I believe it's 4 different New Jersey Transit bus lines, plus 3 or 4 different.
And there's one on New Livingston Avenue, too. There's a bus
Yeah, Livingston has, it's to the New Jersey Transit bus lines, make a right off if you were going to Livingston and head out towards North Brunswick, so there's a lot of
There's several.
transit around this area.
Okay, well, I have lived in downtown before, and I'll say it is a very walkable area, but it would be that much better if there were more accessibility to bus routes and more shelters. I brought this up at other, board meetings. Mr. Patterson might be tired of hearing it.
Charlie. It's 2 blocks in any direction. You get to a
Well, you got the New Brunswick shuttle driving around, and it says Ward 1 and Ward 2 on it right now, so it's not exactly the most efficient, best system possible. They're mislabeled. They've mislabeled the buses, and you watch them, they're almost always empty. So whatever Rutgers is doing, in conjunction with the parking authority, in conjunction with NJ Transit, that bus service is not being efficiently utilized. And you add a shelter in a certain place, it could up the number of people that are riding. So I'm just trying to get this on your radar, that that's a constructive suggestion. And I know other developers have agreed to build shelters outside their places, and I think this might be a good
There's
fit.
a shelter for that bus at the Superfresh.
Okay, super fresh is 2 blocks. Okay. This is not a redevelopment area?
I'm sorry.
This is not in a redevelopment area, correct? A redevelopment zone?
Not a redevelopment.
Okay. Well, but it is in a redevelopment area, or no? No, okay. And the last thing is, will the applicant be applying for, requesting a tax exemption, long-term tax exemption from the city?
We haven't determined if that would be necessary, and a lot of them depend on the office leasing program, bank financing. Our evaluation is we're not quite sure we would even want one.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Yeah. Okay, is there anyone else here from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. Does the board have any further questions?
I certainly think that this type of building will help support our businesses in town as well as the new cultural center.
Okay, seeing none, Mr. Patterson?
The board seeks to make a positive recommendation and suggest the following conditions to the application. Compliance with the terms of the DNR engineering report dated September 25th, 2017. Submission of all necessary easements and/or cross-access agreements for review and approval by the board attorney and the city engineer prior to filing of same. Payment of a site performance bond, amount to be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees, amount to be calculated pursuant to Title 1624-160. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees pursuant to Title 1304 and 1308. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer. Compliance with the terms of the Big Knoll Consulting Group report dated September 22nd, 2017. Planning review escrow funded for all anticipated post-approval reviews. Payment of any of the fees due to the city of New Brunswick related to development or use of the project. Payment of all outstanding taxes and water and sewer fees. Middlesex County Planning Board approval or waiver. Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver. Filing of a lot consolidation deed. Submitting with engineering site plan to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing. Submit architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning and engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing. And all utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at their sole expense. All on-site utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments in the public right-of-way should require city council approval. All construction stages shall be done on site unless an encroachment allowing for the same into the public right-of-way is approved by city council. Streets should be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the Director of Public Works. Tracking pads should be installed at all construction exits. Replacement of damaged streets, curbs, and sidewalks per the direction of the city engineer. That was it.
Thank you. Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with said conditions.
I'll second.
Charlotte McNair,
Yes.
Peg Chester,
Yes.
Ivan Adorno,
Yes.
Teresa Parra,
Yes.
Sue McElligott,
Yes.
John Cox,
Yes.
Nancy Cabal.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you, members of the board.
And we 2017-11, a variance application for the construction of an addition to the existing single-family dwelling located at 16 Prosper Street, Block 71, Lot 44.03, zoning district R-5A.
Good evening, everyone. My name is George Baroud. My law office is about 500 feet from where we're standing now. And you'll be surprised to see how close our witnesses are from as well. We're here before you. 16 Prosper Street is a property that was built in the 1800s, as are a lot of its neighbors. All the neighbors have their additions on in the back, and the property's one of the smallest on the street. I have 3 witnesses. We're going to try to keep each of their testimonies brief due to the late hour, but please feel free to ask us if there are questions or if you want us to elaborate on anything. We have first Michael Baroud, who lives and works 350 feet from where we are now. Mike, stand up, please. Mike and I are owners and members of 1276E LLC, the applicant, who, in case you're wondering, also owns a property, the address of which is 1276 Englishtown Road. It's in another town. So we own this property in the same LLC name. And Mike, I'm going to bring you up. You'll get sworn in.
Can you raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last name for me, please?
Michael Baroud, B-A-R-R-O-O-D.
And do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
I do.
So Mike is going to tell us, and I'm raising this as a question, why we're looking for this addition.
Number one, it's going to conform more to the neighborhood. It's a really tiny house. Looks like it could almost be the garage to the house next door. The girls are more comfortable with a little more numbers, so to get a few more people in the house, there's always someone home. It's in a very popular location, so there's not enough housing over there. That's why all these buildings keep getting put up. And also we're going to be adding some landscaping to the property to alleviate some of the parking situation. A lot of the houses on that street are, all the tenants are parking in the backyards. So that'll kind of close off our backyard, so that can't happen anymore.
So I understand, Mike, is this correct, that you could be looking for $1,900 a month for studios, $2,700 a month for one-bedrooms?
I'd love to.
Just making sure we're paying attention.
But can you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned the girls, you're talking about who?
The tenants we have there now.
And have they expressed anything to you about wanting additional people? And
Yeah, they had quite a few more friends that wanted to live with them, but due to the occupancy number of the house, we couldn't allow it.
Okay. And you think there's a need in that neighborhood?
Absolutely.
Very good. Are there any questions for Mike Baroud?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I'd like to call up Edgar Perez. Edgar's office is 200 feet from here.
Can you raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last name for me, please?
Edgar Perez, P-E-R-E-Z.
And do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
I do.
No, be seated. And Edgar, can you tell us how you're licensed and what you're doing here, what capacity you're here tonight?
I was licensed in 2011, and I do mostly residential work throughout the state, but I am located here in New Brunswick, and I've done quite a bit of work here in New Brunswick as well. Although this is the first time I'm appearing in front of the board.
Licensed as
I'm sorry? Oh, a licensed architect.
Thank you.
And where did you earn your license? Where did you study?
New Jersey Institute of Technology, graduated in 2001.
You drew the architectural plans for this property, 16 Prosper, so you're familiar with those plans?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could just confirm, you're licensed in New Jersey, correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. You brought the bigger version of the plans with you, but these are the same plans that have been distributed?
Correct, correct. You have all the sheets. I'm just going to address some of the, almost the floor plans, but you do have the full set. So this is it. So we'll start here with the foundation. Just wanted to point out that I know that New Brunswick has issues with attempted finish, move up a little bit, finishing basement spaces, but we're not proposing anything in the basement, and the actual addition, which is 18.2 by 18.5, is a crawl space, so there's no additional spaces being added to the foundation itself. On the first floor, when you come into the existing house, what was the old living room is being proposed to be converted into a two-person bedroom. Everything else will remain the same as far as the kitchen and the access to the kitchen. And then from there, the addition projects towards the back, and that will be the new family room. And then on the second floor, again, the front half of the house remains the same, create an extended hallway to access that second new bedroom and another bathroom, a full bathroom for the tenants in the space. Each existing bedroom is a two-person bedroom, and the bedroom on the second floor, the new one, we're proposing a three-person bedroom for a total of nine occupants.
How many bathrooms are in the house now?
Currently, there's only one full bathroom, and it's up here in the corner. So we're proposing a second one just to accommodate all those individuals.
Well, what's the size of the existing bathroom?
It's 27 square feet, so it's relatively small. We're providing a larger one, almost double, 49 square feet for a full bathroom.
You mentioned that the basement, the extension of the basement,
It's right. We're proposing a crawl space foundation so that there won't be any additional basement space per se.
so no one will be able to live in that area?
No one will be able to finish it or live in it or anything of that nature.
Very good. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
You say the new bedroom is going to be for a three-person occupancy, but it's only 179 square feet. You need obviously 180 to have a three-person threshold, so you might want to relocate that. Houses don't really have a third occupant in there if you don't have
The apartments are for sure.
If it pleases the board, I know that the plan currently shows 179 square feet, but it would be very easy to get another 1 square foot out of the closet space to make it.
Right, exactly. We can bring this down a little bit or make it a little smaller. It is a 3-foot deep closet, and there is it's technically a double closet with a linen closet to the hallway. So we can take some square footage out of that and give it to the room to make 180.
We can leave it at 179.
We could leave it at 179 and make it more spacious for the 2 occupants.
Yeah. Do you really have any real expectation you're going to get a triple? I mean, not too many triples out there, that actually rent that way.
Oh, I understand. We leave that for the board. Well,
79 sounds pretty round to me.
No. Round, by definition of round, I'll leave it the way it is. Any questions for Mr. Perez?
Any questions?
Thank you.
So I just want to clarify though, so you're willing to leave it at 179 and have 2 occupants in there?
Yes,
Okay.
we are willing to leave it at 179 with 2 occupants. We would prefer to make it 180 to allow 3 occupants, but that's for the board to decide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perez. Next, I'd like to call Kevin O'Brien, who teaches at the Blaustein School right behind us, among other things. Right hand up, please, sir.
Raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last name for me, please.
O'Brien, Kevin O'Brien, O-B-R-I-E-N.
And do you swear to tell the truth in this matter?
I do. Madam Chair, I've had the pleasure of appearing before you before. I am still currently licensed as a professional planner by the state of New Jersey. And yes, I do teach on occasion over records.
And have your credentials changed since the last time you appeared before us?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll accept you as that.
Thank you very much. You've heard planners like to give a lot of detail and background and tell everybody everything they know about an application. But I suspect, given the hour and the lengthy presentation before us, that perhaps it would be better if we just talked about the relief that's necessary and the proofs that are necessary. And in order to do that, I've got 2 exhibits. And we can mark them as A1 and A2, both prepared by me. This is an old neighborhood. houses date back, one dates back to the 1860s, the rest date back to the 1890s. They are fairly large on small lots. As you can see, the aerial did not turn out well. I apologize for that. I tried to work with this and it didn't turn out well because Google decided to use a shot very early in the day. You can see the shadows just cascading over Prosper Street. So it's not as well defined as I would like it to be. You can see where 16 is, see the intersection up to the top, and the other houses in a row down to the bottom. That whole eastern side of Prosper consists of fairly large houses on 2,500 square foot lots. And if you take a look at the chart, those house square footages range in size from 1,232 to 2,612 square feet. They all exceed the FAR standard of 0.35, ranging between 0.45 and 1.04. The proposed FAR for this application is 0.5, which is similar to or much less than the existing FARs in the area. Our building cover, even though it's going to 27%, is going to be equal to several of the properties in the neighborhood that are directly adjacent to us, as you can see in the chart, or much less, because the current ones are ranging from 22, 24, and 27 up to 0.52. So I think that you're taking, what we're advocating here is to take a small house with small rooms with adequate parking, by the way. We provide sufficient parking in accordance with the application. To provide a larger home that is more in keeping with the neighborhood, more conforming to what is the standard in the neighborhood, as well as one that supplies additional housing for students at Rutgers, which we all know is a crucial problem that is addressing the entire community. I believe that the master plan does address this application by talking about providing a variety of housing choices. The municipal land use law certainly talks about it in Goal A, which is promoting the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare, and G, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses. I can't identify a negative impact because this building is going to be even with the building next to it. We're not going further back. We're not going further up. We're not changing in any way compared to that immediate building next door. And to the rest of the buildings in that row, we're still going to be smaller, as you can see from the chart. So I don't see a negative impact. The FAR variance is a D4 use variance, which means that it's not a use variance for a non-conforming use in a zone like the proverbial gas station in a residential neighborhood. Instead, the FAR variance is for a use that's there already, a conforming use, the residence. And what we have to show you is that the site can accommodate the problems that are associated with that FAR variance. And in this case, I think we've demonstrated that we are going to have a smaller house than most of the homes in the neighborhood, actually smaller than the rest of them that are on that chart. Even though we're starting out smaller, even with this small addition, we're still going to be smaller. In terms of the building cover, I believe that that can be granted on a C2 basis where the benefits outweigh the detriments. And rather than go into more detail, but I'll be happy to answer any questions, I will conclude that I believe that the application can be granted for that substantial impairment of the zone plan without any detriment to the zoning ordinance.
And quickly, the new addition is going to be up to code, correct? Everything's going to be...
Correct. You've heard the architect say that there's going to be a crawl space, so that we're not adding to the basement. The entire addition will be built up to code. There are elements of this house that date back to 1897, so everything in the back is going to be modern, including the new egress, which will be in the back, which will also be completely modern. And another thing is that you're not going to even see this from the street. Everything's going to be behind the house. That whole row of facades on Prosper is not going to change.
Any questions for our principal planner?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, again, as you've heard, we're just proposing to bring this pre-existing nonconformity up to what is already on the street. We're not going to build 20 stories, but we're hoping that you will approve this for us so we can make this addition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak to this application? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. Does the board have any questions? Mr. Patterson?
Board seeks to make a positive recommendation to suggest the following conditions. In compliance with terms of the city engineering report, and do you have a date on that, Rich?
July 18th.
Submission of all necessary easements and or cross-access agreements for review and approval. Actually, we didn't need that, do we? Yes, we do. Submission of all necessary easements and or cross-access agreements for review and approval by the board attorney and the city engineer prior to filing the same. And of all site performance bonds amount to be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of site inspection escrow deposit. Engineering inspection fees amount to be calculated pursuant to Title 1624-160. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees pursuant to Titles 1304 and 1308. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. Compliance with the terms of the city planning report dated September 22nd, 2017. Payment of the fees to the city of New Brunswick related to the development and use of the project. Payment of all outstanding taxes for water and sewer fees. Freehold soil conservation district approval or waiver. Submitting the architectural plans. To comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at their sole expense. All on-site utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachment in the public right-of-way should require city council approval. All constructed site shall be done on-site unless an encroachment line the same in public right-of-way is approved by city council. The street should be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant should cause the streets to be clean if directed by the director of public works. Tracking pads should be installed at all construction exits. Placed on the damaged streets, curb and sidewalks as per the direction of the city engineer. That's it.
And I'd like to see that a condition be put in that the maximum use of each of the bedrooms would be for 2 occupants.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If the board does in fact want to impose a condition of the maximum occupancy for the bedrooms, I would ask that the board consider a deed restriction.
Okay.
But with them only building at the 179, would it automatically be?
Yeah, would we have to
Be
put
granted
that in?
Or
It should be, but things could always, the standards could change, and you never know if somebody goes out there and actually measures it. The inspector goes out there and he comes up with 181 or something. So, hey, you get the road. So it's not a bad idea.
Mr. Patterson, how would a deed restriction affect fire damage or future additions to this property, should there be any? I'd like to propose there be.
I'm not sure I'm following. You're saying that these 4 bedrooms, the maximum occupancy of each bedroom would be 2 persons.
For these 4 bedrooms, I understand, but if there was a restriction on the deed, wouldn't that affect the property and run with the property forever, whether that property were to burn down and be rebuilt or be sold to a neighboring property and developed into something different or bigger or better?
So long as this property is in existence, if this structure is on the property, the maximum occupancy per bedroom would be 2.
Okay. For the existing property, would that limit coming back for any future hearings or approvals? Should there be fire damage or other type of damage to the property?
Well, I don't think that this is the proper forum to opine about what your client's rights might be, but I would say that the municipal land use law does permit you to come back to a board.
Sure, I understand.
That imposes the condition, that is.
Yes.
I'll make a motion with said conditions.
I'll second. Charlotte McNair,
Yes.
Peg Chester,
Yes.
Ivan Adorno,
Yes.
Tracy Parra,
Yes.
Sue Gilligan,
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
Nancy Paul.
Yes.
Thank you all.